Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I trust everyone is well. My name is Charles Scott from Civil Designer Software. Thank you for allowing the time to join us today for the second of this four-part Civil Designer Software version 8.5 mini-series launch. The next two webinars in this series will take place over the following two Thursdays, with version 8.5's official launch being Thursday the 11th of November, the same day as the final webinar. As attendees of this webinar series, we'll directly email you the version 8.5 download link on the 11th of November. I remember the very first BIM conference I attended. The chairman opened the 3-day event in front of a large audience in Sandton, Johannesburg by saying, "You cannot buy BIM. BIM is not a software package. Yes, software tools form the technological core of any BIM process, but it is not something you can purchase online." This was not what some of the sponsors were expecting or wanting to hear, as the term BIM has unfortunately been converted into a marketing buzzword, leading to the actual definition being repurposed to fit various product campaign objectives. Just Google the word BIM and you'll see what I mean. He went on to add, a sound BIM process allows all stakeholders to collaborate on a single model to design, construct, and operate a civil engineering asset of any type. Further to this, in the final panel discussion at this year's BIM Harambee Africa conference last week, Giles Pendleton, the Group CEO of the board at the Green Building Council of South Africa, reiterated that BIM is not a design tool. It is a life cycle asset management tool. So then the question is, how does design software fit into a BIM process, which by its very nature promotes software agnosticism? The answer is simple. Absolute interoperability. The ability to share meaningful data with the organizations and different engineering specializations that you collaborate with, which is something Civil Designer has always advocated and have annually spent a great deal of our developmental resources on. This brings us back to today's presentation, where we welcome back Andrew Cole, who will be covering interoperability in Civil Designer version 8.5. During Andrew's time today, please feel free to use the text chat service on your GoToWebinar app or webpage to ask us any questions you may have during his time. After today's webinar, we'll be posting a video copy on our website in the webinar section. So, good afternoon again, Andrew, and please take it away.
Thanks, Charles, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're very excited to show you all the new features in Civil Designer 8.5. And as Charles mentioned in his intro, I'll be looking at Civil Designer 8.5's compatibility and interoperability when it comes to the sharing of your project design data with other organizations that you need to collaborate with on a project. Civil Designer has always been fully compatible with a range of industry standards when it comes to the sharing of data, including file formats such as DWG, DXF, DGN, and LandXML. But the current buzzword when it comes to the sharing of information is BIM. And for today's webinar, we're going to be mainly focusing on how we share the Civil Designer design elements in a BIM environment by making use of the industry foundation classes file format, which has the IFC file extension. The IFC file is the ISO registered standardized file format for sharing information on BIM platforms. Something very important that I must mention at this stage is that as from Civil Designer 8.5, the IFC export module is included in Civil Designer's base module, the Design Center module. So anyone that has access to a Civil Designer 8.5 license will have the full IFC export functionality at their disposal. The reason for this is that we have replaced the previously used IFC engine library, which had costs and licensing restrictions attached to it, with the ODA or Open Design Alliance's IFC library. We have been members of the ODA for years, and they are a non-profit organization that provides software development tools to developers, which now includes the IFC tools. This new IFC library has allowed us to add additional intelligence to the IFC output, with, for example, extruded profiles replacing generic meshes, which reduces the export IFC file sizes substantially. Today's webinar is to show you some of the new features that have been added to the IFC export functionality in Civil Designer 8.5, With Civil Designer 8.5, we will now be exporting our Civil Designer entities with much more built-in intelligence, with objects such as IFC flow segments for our pipes, and IFC sign, and IFC curb for our road entities. With Civil Designer 8.5, we can now export the road signs, road markings, and linear road furniture like guardrails, which are in your project, to BIM models with the IFC export function. We also now have support for IFC 4x3, which is the latest version on the market. So I'm going to run through the IFC export process and then show you what those files look like in some of the readily available BIM viewers on the market. Just something you will notice that I'm using the new 8.5 render view separate window option, where you can have your Civil Designer plan view on your screen while you're designing, and you've also got the render view open at the same time. So quite useful in that as you make changes to your design in the plan view, you can then also see those changes in the render view. That render view separate window option can be set in the system settings under your render view setting. You've got the render to setting. As you can see, we now have two options, the CAD window and the new separate window. The CAD window is the traditional method where the render is drawn in the CAD view, and the new separate window option gives you the flexibility to either tile your two windows vertically, like I have done on my screen, or even move the separate render view to a second monitor. Okay, so let's have a look at the IFC export. The function is in the CAD module under the File menu and the Import Export option, and Export to IFC. For the export of this particular project to IFC, I'm going to export the terrain model and roads 1 and 2. I'm not going to do the individual IFC files, and I want to export the road layworks. I also want to include the road furniture, as can be seen in this project of mine. I've got some road signs, I've got some road markings, and I've also got some linear road furniture. As you can see, there's a guardrail at the back over here. Okay, so running the IFC export. Okay, and then just opening the exported IFC file in BIM Vision, which is one of the popular BIM viewers on the market. And selecting my terrain surface. I can view some of the properties over here. I can select to hide the surface and then just zoom into the road section over here that I'm interested in. You can see the intersection that I had in view in my Civil Designer project. You can select specific entities and then view the exported properties in the properties bar. I can select, for example, the stop road sign and then view the properties that have been allocated to it from Civil Designer. So that's the road signs. You've got your road markings that you can select and view as well, and the linear road furniture across the road. Let's just have a look at that. So that's my guardrail in the BIM viewer. It's a little bit trickier to pan around than in Civil Designer inside these other programs, but it gives you an idea of exactly what you're getting in the BIM model. So all this information we're exporting from Civil Designer to the BIM models. And then just having a look at the same project in BIM Colab Zoom, which is also a free BIM viewer, which in this case is giving me a little more color, but pretty much the same thing. So you can view your BIM IFC files and check out the properties in the summary section. Okay, so moving back to Civil Designer, I'm going to run through the settings in the IFC export dialog in a little bit more detail, with the focus being on the added new features in Civil Designer 8.5. As we are on the topic of compatibility and interoperability, one of the popular existing export options is the export to shapefile. We have always been very good and very efficient at exporting to GIS shapefiles. The shapefile export creates a very comprehensive file which includes all your project's design data, which can then be imported into a GIS software package. You can also export to KML if you want to view your design in Google Earth. Perhaps you want to check the position of your site in Google Earth or show it to a client. And then the export to IFC is the export that we are focusing on today. The IFC file is the preferred file type for exporting data to BIM models. The first thing to do would be to select the Civil Designer design items that you would like to export with this particular IFC export. You can select to export your terrain model and then which of your road files you would like to export. If you have a sewer, stormwater, or water network in your design, then you can optionally export these as well. And then all your auxiliary services, so normal crossing services, can also be exported with your IFC file. Okay, then just a few additional points here. We can export each add-on module, so your sewer, stormwater, and water networks, for example, as separate IFC files. We can export all the CAD mesh objects in the drawing to IFC as well. This export CAD mesh enables you to include all the 3D CAD entities that are made up of polyface or polygon meshes in your drawing with the IFC file, to then have these items included as a mesh in the BIM model. So that would include items like 3D blocks or furniture that were added to your project drawing that are made up of these meshes. The negating coordinates would be for Southern Hemisphere drawings or projects. And then if you want to export each individual add-on module as a separate IFC file, you also have the option to export each road as a separate IFC file. So essentially, if you have your BIM model and you only want to view certain roads, you have the option to only import individual roads one at a time, as and when needed. Whereas if you exported all the roads in the one IFC file, you would then be loading all the roads into the BIM model at the same time. So this option gives you more flexibility when it comes to importing data into your BIM model. Okay, and then this is a very important option over here to export your road layerworks. So that would depend on how much detail the person viewing the exported IFC file would need. If they need to view and interrogate the road's pavement layerworks to draw off quantities, for example, then this export option would need to be checked. Then we also have this option to segment the length of road that you are exporting. When would this be beneficial? If your client would like to schedule the material, the plant, or time allocation for the construction of a road in sections, then this option would be ideal. So they would be able to extract quantities and do the planning on those individual segments of road. Okay, then you can also make use of the BIM naming standard file names, which currently includes the BS 1192 file naming convention. So you would be able to add the project code, the company code, the zone describing which specific part of the project this work entails, as well as a level code. Is this ground floor work, first floor, or all levels of the design? Then select a document number from the drop-down. For example, is this an infrastructure design? Is it surface water drainage, etc.? It will read in the code automatically. A suitability status of the document. Is it suitable for tender purposes or construction purposes, etc.? And a revision number. So those are the BS 1192 naming standards. Okay, so that's optional. Okay, and then importantly, you would need to select which IFC schema to use. A schema is a defined framework or the structure of how the data needs to be stored in these BIM models. These schemas have evolved and have needed to be adapted as additional information has needed to be added to the BIM models. Infrastructure design, for example, is a relatively new addition to the BIM model, and elements of road and railway designs are still being defined and classified in the newest schemas. As you can see from this list of schema updates, the IFC 4x3 is the most recent and up-to-date schema, which includes the latest additions. And Civil Designer 8.5 now supports this latest version. Okay, then moving on to the catalog selection. With the catalog selection, you have the option to add the classification codes applicable to your specific project to the design entities in the IFC file export. We currently cater for the Uniclass 2015 classification codes, which are the British codes, the Uniformat 2 codes used in Canada and the USA, and then the South African AQS codes. So then these classification codes will then be assigned to each exported Civil Designer entity and will then be visible in the BIM model for whoever is interrogating or viewing that BIM model. Okay, then we also have the IFC Properties button, essentially assigning which properties of your Civil Designer entities you'd want exported to the BIM model. Initially, we exported a fixed set of properties for each Civil Designer entity, be it a road, sewer, stormwater, or water pipe. But then we added this custom properties option to give you, the user, more control over which properties you would like to export to the BIM model. So as you can see, this was just a fixed set of properties that we initially assigned. For example, a stormwater pipe with all the properties that you would expect to have assigned to a stormwater pipe. So what sort of customization can be achieved? You can actually double click and edit the property name or the source. The source being the exact property that will be extracted from the Civil Designer design data in your project, and your description can also be edited and changed. You've also got an option to disable a certain property from being exported, those being from the fixed set of properties. You do additionally also have an option over here to right click on a line and insert your own new property. If you insert a property, you can then leave it blank so that someone who then loads your IFC file into their BIM model might be able to add their own specific or required details to that entity in their specific BIM model. So those are just some of the customization options that we do have. Okay, then I just wanted to once again point out some of the new entities that we are exporting to IFC in Civil Designer 8.5. So that would be your road signs, road furniture, road markings, as well as your crossing services, or as we call them now, auxiliary services. So those are just some of the new export options that we've added in Civil Designer 8.5. You can see in the dialog that we've got some new checkboxes allowing you to select to export your road signs, road markings, and linear road furniture. Okay, and then another addition to Civil Designer 8.5 is that we can now save to an IFC zip file. So the exported IFC files for larger projects can get quite big. The file sizes get quite large, but with the IFC zip file, you are reducing the file size quite substantially. So once again, another nice feature in Civil Designer 8.5 is this option to create an IFC zip file. When I exported this project to an IFC file earlier, I also exported an IFC zip file for the project. And here in File Explorer, you will see that the zip file size is quite substantially less than the normal exported IFC file. You can see that the standard IFC file is about 63 megs, whereas the zip file is in the region of about 11 megabytes. Okay, so next up, I'm going to export a Civil Designer road and view that in Allplan. So just returning to Civil Designer, I'm going to go to this tutor project of mine. I'm just going to close the render view. So in this case, I'm just looking at exporting this current road in view to IFC in those segmented road segments or sections. Okay, so it's just this individual road that I'm going to use, and I'm only exporting Victoria Road. So I've selected to include the road layworks and then to segment the road into 25 meter lengths. Okay, I've done that already just to save some time, so let's have a look. We can view the exported IFC file in BIM Collab. So you can see the summary. I'm just looking at the road layers, for example. So you'd be able to check out the road quantities for each road segment and the individual road layers. and then viewing the exported Victoria Road in Allplan. Allplan is a concrete modeling, reinforcement and detailing package. So in Allplan, just switching off the visibility of all the other road segments and just viewing an individual segment of the road. Victoria Road was a dual carriageway, so we have the two carriageways side by side, and then just selecting properties of individual road segments. So that's the advantage of exporting those segmented roads. In this case, you can view and select individual road layers for each segment. You can check the attributes and, for example, check the quantities for each of the road layers. So as you can see, there are lots of improvements built into our IFC export in Civil Designer 8.5, and we really are on the cutting edge of this IFC development. And that will all be available to you in Civil Designer 8.5. There are loads of other new features coming in Civil Designer 8.5, and we will try our best to cover all these new features in the upcoming webinars. That's all I have time for today, so cheers for now, and back to you, Charles.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was very interesting. And more importantly, thank you very much to all of you who attended today's second version 8.5 launch webinar. Andrew and Cameron have, over the last 2 weeks, perfectly demonstrated how Civil Designer is, by its very nature, a truly integrated civil infrastructure design software application. With Civil Designer, there is no API layer between design modules and the CAD platform, and no division between design modules. Our entire software solution has been developed as an integrated set of tools over the last 30 years, as opposed to a lightly associated set of design applications developed by different third-party developers for a common CAD platform via an API, all operating in their own silos. This ultimately means that Civil Design allows for the real-time 3D visualization of comprehensive live design data, allowing for more design freedom and the sharing of analyzed, data-rich civil infrastructure design project information, so as to contribute to any BIM workflow. Additionally, there is no need for downstream civil infrastructure project compilation applications to test the constructability of a project via proximity and collision analyses. Plus, additional software to compile and manage production drawings, and further standalone applications to generate 3D models from then disconnected design data, as this is all covered in Civil Designer. Please join us next Thursday at the same time and place being the same link, where Christopher Smith will be covering Civil Designer version 8.5's new production drawing compilation and management functionality. Should you require any further information with regards to today's demonstration, please use the email address listed on your screens right now. Please also visit our website and follow our Civil Designer Software company page on LinkedIn. Once again, thank you very much for your time today. See you next Thursday. Have a great afternoon, weekend, and goodbye for now.